When my cousin said the word murder, every fork froze midair. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the ticking clock over the kitchen door. I was Linda, 53, hosting my first Thanksgiving since my mother passed. The table looked perfect, cranberry glaze shining under the light, gravy steam rising like memory. Everyone had come. My brother Mark, with his sharp grin, Aunt Helen with her endless corrections, and Emma, the cousin who always spoke before she thought. The air smelled of cinnamon and roast butter. For a brief moment, I believed we might feel like a family again. The warmth lasted maybe 5 minutes. Emma laughed too loud, then stared at the turkey knife as if remembering something. "I found something about Uncle James," she said. Nobody looked up. She kept going anyway. "He didn't die in that boating accident. Someone in this family killed him." I laughed to break the silence. "That's insane, Emma. What are you even talking about?" She met my eyes, pale and shaking. "I found a letter." Every face turned toward her. The gravy cooled on the table. Mark's jaw tightened, the vein in his neck visible. Aunt Helen clutched her pearls like a habit she'd rehearsed for years. I felt my pulse climb, an old childhood panic waking up. For years our family told that story. An accident, bad weather, the river too high. We had accepted it, buried it, built our holidays over the lie. I tried again, softer. "A letter from who?" Emma's voice cracked. "From your mother." That hit like glass breaking. My mother had been the keeper of every family secret. She'd handled the estate, the insurance, the money that still trickled down to all of us. I remembered the small monthly transfers she'd arranged, enough to keep Mark's business alive, enough to make the rest of us dependent without noticing. If Emma was right, that money might not just be inheritance. It might be hush money. The laughter that once filled the room vanished. Even the children stopped moving. I could hear the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint whistle of the radiator. The smell of gravy suddenly turned sour. Mark spoke first. "Don't listen to her. She's had wine." "I'm not drunk," Emma snapped. "I can prove it." Her words landed like a match on dry leaves. No one moved. My husband put his fork down and whispered, "Let it go, Linda. It's a holiday." But I couldn't. I watched Emma's trembling hands and realized she wasn't performing. She was terrified. "What proof?" I asked. The words surprised me. I'd meant to stay neutral, to be the peacekeeper Mother raised me to be. But the question slipped out, sharp as that turkey knife shining between us. Emma swallowed. "I shouldn't have said anything. Not here." Mark leaned forward, voice low. "Then don't." Their eyes locked, his full of warning, hers of guilt. For a moment, I thought he might reach across the table. Instead, he smiled, the way he did when lying, the kind of smile that said, "I dare you." Aunt Helen tried to pray aloud, pretending we could rewind. The children whispered in the hallway. I felt the air thicken, like the house itself was listening. Inside my chest, a quiet promise formed. I needed to know what Emma had found. I needed to read that letter, even if it destroyed what was left of our family. The ticking clock grew louder, marking every second of silence. My hands trembled under the tablecloth, brushing against the smooth stem of my wine glass. I whispered, almost to myself, "This can't be happening." But it was. And in that frozen moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Every family secret survives because someone chooses comfort over truth. That comfort died at my table. Emma said she could prove it. I couldn't sleep, not after what Emma said. The house held its breath while the dishes dried on their racks. I moved through the hall in socks, careful with every step. I told myself it was memory, not a sign. Warmth lived here once. It felt thin, but real. I went to her room and clicked the bedside lamp. The desk waited the way she left it, neat and square. That desk had balanced our lives for decades, with bills and wills and the calendar she guarded like treasure. I opened the top drawer and found stamps and paper clips. The second drawer stuck, then gave. A row of files, old taxes, insurance notes, an envelope marked household. I kept going because stopping would mean choosing comfort over truth. A folded paper hid behind a stack of receipts. My fingers slid it free. The crease was sharp, as if someone had shut it fast. I did not read at first. I pressed the edges together and waited, thoughts steadying. It was late, past 2 a.m., but time meant less than the choice in front of me. I could put it back. I could pretend we were fine. I opened the letter. The handwriting was hers, careful but tired. It named my uncle, and it named my grandfather. One line crushed the rest. She could not forgive what he did to their father. My eyes moved across the page twice, then a third time, like reading might change the meaning. It didn't. The words sat there, calm and final. I set the letter on the desk and looked at the room, at the photo on the dresser and the lampshade. I could feel the pull of the past asking me to leave it alone. The stakes were simple. If I pushed forward, I might break what family we still had. If I let it go, I would be part of the lie. I slid the letter into my robe pocket. I closed the drawer. Then I took out her ledger and ran my thumb over the worn cover. She had written every payment that crossed this house, from winter heat to Mark's business loan, from holiday groceries to charity envelopes. Money had always been the quiet thread that tied our decisions together. It could bind, it could choke. Knuckles tapped my door. I froze. "You awake?" "I'm fine," I said. "Open up." "It's late." A pause stretched. "You're not starting anything." He tried the knob. I held it still with my palm. He sighed and walked away. When the hall settled, I let go and stood there, steadying my breath. Being brave is dull work. It's just small choices while nobody is watching. I sat on the edge of the bed and read the letter again, once through without blinking. My mother's words did not accuse, not outright. They circled blame like a hawk over a field. They hinted at threats, at pressure, at something taken and something owed. They did not say murder, they did not say who, but they were not nothing. I went back to the desk and tucked the ledger beneath the sweaters in the closet. I put the stamps in a jar so I could claim I was cleaning. I left the folded paper in my pocket, right over my heartbeat. I told myself that in the morning I would make copies and hide one with the neighbor. I told myself I would not be careless with proof again. I turned off the lamp and stood alone. I kept the door locked behind me. The house felt smaller than it had an hour before. Secrets do that. They shrink the rooms and stretch the nights. I made a simple line in my head. I would find the truth. I would pay whatever it cost. I would not ask permission. The ink smelled faintly of smoke. By morning, Emma wanted to leave town. The house felt thin and watchful. At 7 a.m., I stood by the porch swing and watched her car keys shake in her hand. The first thing I heard was a file opening on her phone, a rough burst of a man's voice. She had packed while the coffee brewed, a single bag, a jacket, the old photo in her purse. "I can't stay," she whispered. "He said to stop digging." She pressed the phone into my palm. The screen lit my fingers. The recording began, low and sharp. My brother's voice pressed flat to hide anger. "Drop it," he said. "I won't," she said. "Then you'll regret it." The words were short. The pause afterward was longer. I listened twice, then a third time, because fear makes you doubt your own ears. There was the scrape of a chair, then the quiet threat again. He told her to forget the letter, to keep the family story, to think about what you live on. Money slipped into every warning. I drew a line in my head. I would not let her leave alone. We could go to the station, ask a detective to store the audio, put a date on the file. She stared at the boards like a way out might open. "We need help," I said. "Real help." "He'll turn everyone against us," she said. "He'll call me unstable." "He already has." I kept my voice steady. "He's using fear like a bill that never stops." That was my first boundary. She would not meet him without me. No private talks, no favors until the truth had daylight. No access without witnesses. He arrived before 9, walking up the path like he owned the yard. He looked at the phone, then at Emma's bag by the door. "Where are you going?" "Out," she said. "Not today." Wind moved the swing. I stood between them and felt my heart pound hard. "Give me the phone," he said. "No." "You're not thinking clear." "I'm thinking fine." He stepped closer. "You want your share? Act like family." I thought of the trust Mother left, the monthly transfers that kept heat on, that kept his business afloat, that bought holiday food without us naming numbers. He made us feel poor in our own minds. He said the quiet part. Loyalty decides who keeps the house. I kept the boundary. No meetings without me, no threats. If you want to talk, we do it at the station. He laughed. "You want to make this public?" "Keep pushing," I said. "See where it goes." He dropped his voice and went for the smear. He called her dramatic. He called me cruel. He said we wanted to ruin him out of envy. I answered calm. "We have a record." He leaned close. "Destroy it." I lifted the phone. "It's backed up." That was the proof response, simple as a held screen. He knew I would walk it to a desk with a badge. His eyes flicked to the road, weighing control. He left with a promise to fix this, which we both knew meant pressure. After he drove off, my husband touched my shoulder. "You can't burn the whole family," he said. "Think about the cost." "I am thinking," I said. "This is the cost." We planned to file a report after lunch. I made eggs we barely ate. I slipped the phone in my bag and checked my account, gauging if I could cover a lawyer. The answer tightened my throat, but did not change my mind. The stakes were simple: truth or silence, safety or fear. Emma said she needed a walk to clear her head. She promised she'd be back in an hour. The porch swing creaked as she passed. The phone felt heavier in my bag than it should have. Emma vanished that afternoon. Emma's car sat in her driveway, keys still inside. The car door was cracked, a thin gap like a held breath. I leaned in, and the first thing that hit me was the sharp reek of gasoline mixed with the dry bite of cold air. It clung to my coat and stayed in my mouth. The house behind me looked ordinary. Nothing about it felt ordinary anymore. Her purse lay on the front seat, half open. A wallet, a crumpled receipt, the corner of a photograph. I reached for my phone and stopped myself. I had learned enough to touch less and see more. On the ground near the porch steps, I spotted her phone, face down, spidered with cracks, as if someone had ground it beneath a heel. The sight felt like a hand closing around my throat. I called the station. "She's missing," I said. "Something's wrong." "Adults can leave when they want," the officer said. Calm voice, polite doubt. "She wouldn't leave without the phone," I said. "Or the keys in the car." "Are you sure she didn't?" "I am." He sighed. "We can take a report." I held the broken phone with 2 fingers and slid it into a sandwich bag from my pocket. I kept bags for leftovers in my coat because life had trained me to save small things. Today it made me look prepared, which helped. When the cruiser pulled up, a young officer with tired eyes stepped onto the walk. Gatekeeper energy, all policy and patience. He asked for basics, and I gave them. He looked at the keys, the purse, the phone in the plastic. He shined a flashlight beam across the walkway, the white circle sliding over dirt and brick. He was careful. He was also busy. This was one more problem on a long list he didn't control. "She told me she was scared," I said. "She had proof." "What kind of proof?" "A letter," I said. "It could change how the family money is handled. It could change who keeps their house." He wrote that down. Money always gets attention. The truth is simple. When cash moves, people move with it. I called my husband and asked him to meet me by the porch. "We'll file the report," he said. "Then what?" "Then we take the letter to someone outside the family." My voice didn't shake. "We stop asking permission." He rubbed his brow. "Lawyers cost." "I know," I said. "So does silence." That was my boundary. No more private deals, no more backroom peace. I would not hand evidence to anyone who shared our last name. The counter came fast. A car rolled up. Mark stepped out, face smooth, concern cranked to high. "I came as soon as I heard," he said. He reached for the bag with the phone. "Don't," I said. Just trying to help. Help by standing back. He put his hands up. She's dramatic, you know that. She probably needed space. I kept my tone steady. Space doesn't smell like gasoline. His mouth twitched. You think I did something? I think you did something. He turned to the officer. My sister is grieving. I'm filing this report, I said, and I'm delivering a letter to counsel my mother used. He smiled without warmth. You'll spend yourself broke chasing ghosts. I'll spend what it takes. He tried a new angle. Think about the accounts. The trust pays your taxes. It kept the roof sound last winter. Is this the hill you want to plant on? The hill is called truth, I said. I can pay bills. I can't pay for a missing person with a lie. The officer cleared his throat. Let's keep this focused. He took the broken phone from the bag and photographed it, then sealed it again. Authority acknowledgement. Small, but real. We walked the yard together. I found a bent earring back near the steps. The officer took it with tongs and nodded. We'll log it. You'll get a case number. When he left, Mark lingered in the driveway, eyes on the house. You're making a mistake, he said. It wasn't fear in his voice. It was management. I'm sealing copies of the letter tonight, I said. One stays with me, one goes to a safe place, one to the attorney at 9 p.m. He stepped close. Don't do this. Back up, I said. He did, because he had to. I went home before dark and made 2 copies on the old printer. I slid one into a manila envelope and wrote a name that still felt heavy with authority. I tucked the other beneath the loose board under the dresser. I checked my bank balance and did the simple math of hard months. Legal fees, groceries, heating oil. The numbers didn't scare me enough to stop. The stakes were clear. If I failed, I would lose her and maybe my own safety. At 9 p.m., I sealed the main envelope with tape. The house held a hush, as if even the walls knew a line had been crossed. I set the packet by the front door and stood there to breathe. When I opened the door for air, something slid across the mat with a dry whisper. A note appeared on my doorstep. Stop digging. The handwriting wasn't hers this time. I knew before I finished unfolding the paper. The loops were wide, careless. The ink was the same blue she always used, but the tone wasn't her. The note said, Stop digging or lose what's left. No greeting, no name. The words leaned to the right, like a push. I stood by the mailbox for a long minute. The metal was cold, the paper rough between my fingers. The smell of cologne clung faintly to it, the kind Mark wore when he wanted to look respectable. I slipped it into my pocket and drove straight to the lawyer's office. He had already read my mother's letter from the night before. His brow stayed tight as he said, If that letter holds, the estate could be contested. I asked what that meant. He said, It means money changes hands if someone's death becomes a crime. That single word, crime, changed the air in the room. My mother's careful legacy had just turned into motive. He leaned back. If you plan to take this further, make copies of everything. Store one off-site. Will that protect me? I asked. It protects the paper, he said. Not you. He mentioned fees, a retainer large enough to sting. I agreed anyway. I would use the savings my mother left for emergencies. This counted. When I left, I signed the check and felt my chest tighten. I had crossed from worry into evidence. There was no way back. When I pulled into the driveway, the mailbox door hung open again. Inside was the torn envelope I'd already handled, stuffed back in as if to mock me. I walked inside and laid both letters on the counter. The house was silent, the kind that made you hear your pulse. My husband watched from the doorway. You should stop, he said. Let it rest. If I stop, I said, it keeps growing. He rubbed his forehead. You're spending money we don't have on ghosts. Then I'll work more, I said. Truth has a cost. So does silence. He shook his head. You're chasing danger. Maybe danger's been here longer than we noticed. I gathered the notes, slipped them into plastic, and drove to the precinct. The same officer from before took the report, polite and detached. It could be a prank, he said. No clear threat. It says, lose what's left, I answered. That's a threat. He hesitated, then said, we'll file it. If anything else happens, call. He didn't write fast enough to believe his own words. When I returned home, the light was dimming. I placed the envelope in a kitchen drawer and locked it with the spare cabinet key. I made tea, hands shaking. I could still smell the faint trace of gasoline from the day Emma disappeared, like the story had seeped into my skin. Mark called that evening. His voice was calm. You've involved lawyers, he said. Not smart. Neither is intimidation, I said. You always were dramatic. Mother would hate this. She'd hate what you did, I said, voice low, and I'm done pretending otherwise. He laughed once, short and sharp, and hung up. I stared at the quiet phone, every instinct screaming that I'd been marked. Not for debt, not for love, just for crossing a line he thought I couldn't. Later that night, I stood at the counter again, the same spot where the Thanksgiving turkey once sat steaming with promise. The warmth from that day was gone, replaced by cold air creeping under the door. I remembered the laughter, the light, the sound of Emma's voice saying she could prove it. Every memory felt like a warning I hadn't heard soon enough. Fear became a sharper tool than courage. I started unplugging appliances, double-checking locks, backing up files on a flash drive. I wrote down every detail of the threats in a small spiral notebook, even the smell of the cologne, because that was proof too. I folded the notebook shut and placed it beside my bed. At 9 p.m., as I reached for the light switch, the house fell dark before my hand touched it. A rush of silence filled the rooms. The clock stopped ticking. That night, someone cut the power. The house went black right before 9. I stood in the kitchen with a mug halfway to my mouth, and the hum of the fridge died so fast it felt like breath held too long. I found a candle in the drawer and struck a match. In the small circle it made, I saw dust hanging like tiny moths, and the edges of the room grew strange. I walked to the basement door and took the steps slow. The air cooled with each step. At the bottom, I felt along the wall until my fingers met the metal edge of the circuit box. I opened it and stared into the dim gray maze. Every switch looked fine. I flipped the main off and on. Nothing changed. The house stayed heavy and still. Power doesn't just leave, it gets pushed. Upstairs, my husband called out, "Trip a breaker?" "Doesn't look like it," I said. "This is deliberate." He sighed. "You're tired. Let it wait till morning." "I won't sleep." I checked the back door, then the side window lock, then the garage. Every latch felt like a sentence. Control comes in small pieces. You gather them, or you give them away. I lit a second candle and set it near the hallway table. I kept my voice flat. "Call an electrician." "At this hour? That's a premium." "I'll pay it." I did the math while climbing the stairs. The retainer check I'd written today had trimmed our cushion down to a narrow line. An emergency fee would cut it thinner. I understood the trade. Safety over savings. The security system panel blinked once, then died. I turned to the entry camera and found the slot empty. No card. The last thread between what happened and proof had vanished. I felt anger rise, clean and useful. Someone wanted me blind. I called the non-emergency number. "Power is out, breaker's fine, my camera card is missing." "Any sign of forced entry?" the dispatcher asked. "No, signs of intent." "We can log it," she said. "Patrol may swing by." "Please do." When I hung up, Mark's name flashed on my phone. I answered because running shrinks you. "You lose power?" he asked, too casual. "Yes." "Happens. Old houses." Funny timing. "You're making this a spectacle." "You took the card." He laughed. "You really think that?" "I know it." "Then prove it." I kept my breathing even. "The station has our previous reports." "That detective doesn't care," he said. "Nobody does. You're wasting money and time." "Both are mine to waste." "Then stop whining when the bills bite." 3 tight lines can gouge deeper than a speech. I let silence answer for me, because he wanted noise. He hung up first. My husband leaned in the doorway. "Maybe he's right about the bills. We still have the furnace service due." "Then I'll cancel the holiday plans," I said. "I'll pick up extra shifts. We'll manage." You're burning bridges. They were set on fire already. I'm only looking at the flames. He took a step closer. You're not yourself. I'm exactly myself. I'm just done being quiet. The doorbell rang once, soft. A patrol car idled at the curb. The officer glanced at the candle and followed me downstairs. I opened the box and showed the clean rose. He checked the backyard with his light, then the side gate. He asked about enemies. I said family trouble. He did not scoff. He nodded, wrote notes, and pointed at the camera mount. If there's a card missing, file that detail. Sometimes small things matter. That small acknowledgement steadied me. Authority doesn't solve everything, but it draws a line. He left a card with a number and told me to call if anyone came by. After he drove off, the rooms felt larger. Fear had burned off into purpose. I packed the 2 letters, the plastic bag with Emma's broken phone case, and the notebook where I logged every shift in this story. I stuck the envelope under my coat and told my husband I'd be gone 20 minutes. Where? Emma's. If someone pulled our card, they may have touched hers. It's late. I know. Some choices only make sense in the dark. The street was a tunnel of quiet. I parked by her curb and let the candle from my bag steady my hand as I unlocked the front door with the spare she'd hidden under the pot. The air inside held a stale chill. I moved room to room, slow, touching nothing I didn't need to. The panel by her entry showed the same empty slot where a card should sit. I wrote that down. In the living room, the couch leaned into the wall like a tired friend. I slid my fingers along the floorboard and felt something catch the skin. A torn corner of glossy paper peeked out from the shadows behind the cushions. I pulled the couch forward, heart thudding as if it could knock sense into the room. The candle shook and threw a soft wobble across the frame I found. Behind her couch, I found a blood-stained photo. It was us, smiling beside my uncle's cabin. The photo was old, the corners soft, but the stain across its center was fresh. Dark red had seeped into the paper, drying in uneven streaks. My fingers stuck when I turned it over. On the back, a date in Emma's handwriting, 3 weeks before his death. The ink had bled slightly, but the numbers were clear. She must have written it after finding the connection. I sat on the floor, staring at the picture under the candle's faint glow. The frame behind us showed pine trees, sunlight, and the lake. I could almost hear the water slapping the dock. We'd been laughing that day, at least on the surface. But I remembered how my mother's jaw tightened when my uncle mentioned the property line. He had wanted to sell part of the land to liquidate old debts. She told him no. I was pouring lemonade when he said, "Then I'll take what's mine another way." Emma had heard him too. Now I understood why she'd been collecting pieces. Letters, notes, records. That picture was her silent proof. I placed the photo inside a plastic sleeve from my file folder. My husband's voice came from the doorway. "You found something again?" "A photo," I said. "It's marked. Blood and a date." He hesitated. "Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. You've already spent hundreds on lawyers, printing, reports. I'll spend thousands if I have to." My tone surprised both of us. Money can return, truth doesn't. He leaned against the wall. What if the truth ruins everyone? It already has. The next morning, I drove to the lawyer's office again. The same gray sky hung over the street. Inside, he studied the photograph under a lamp and said, "You're right to be cautious. We'll request a private analysis. If this comes back as human blood, it becomes evidence." He slid it into a sealed envelope and filled out the form. The pen scratched steadily, calm against my racing heart. He glanced at me. "You understand this could reopen an investigation?" "I'm counting on it." He nodded once. "There's a fee for expedited work." "I'll cover it." I handed him my debit card without pause. It wasn't about comfort anymore. It was about clarity. Driving home, the silence in the car pressed heavy. The heater rattled weakly, and I thought about how my mother had handled family battles with quiet control and unshakable pride. I had inherited neither, only her debts of conscience. At a stoplight, I looked down at my hands and realized how steady they'd become. Fear had hardened into function. When I got home, I found my husband at the kitchen table, bills spread around him. "We can't keep this up," he said. "You're emptying accounts we need." "I'll find a way to earn it back," I said. "But if I let this die, I'll never forgive myself." He rubbed his temples. "You're chasing shadows." I pulled the folder from my bag and placed it beside him. No shadows. Evidence. His eyes moved from the folder to me. "What if you're wrong?" "I'm not." We stayed silent long enough to hear the old clock tick through 5 full seconds. He finally stood, muttering, "You're turning this into a crusade. Call it survival." That evening, I sat alone on the porch. The candlelight flickered against the photocopies I'd printed before handing the original over. The pine trees in the image blurred as I blinked, and I caught the faint outline of something behind my uncle's smile, a shadow maybe, or a person standing too far back to recognize. It could have been anyone, but the thought lodged deep. When the phone rang, I jumped. It was the lawyer's assistant. "We sent it for testing," she said. "You'll have results by Friday." I thanked her and hung up, clutching the receiver tight. Every day between now and Friday would stretch like wire. I whispered to the photo, "You knew, Emma. You tried to warn me." The air cooled fast. I went inside and locked every door. My husband had gone to bed without a word. The kitchen light flickered once, steadying after. I stared at the envelope copy lying on the counter and whispered, "If it's real, everything changes." When the phone rang again late that night, I almost didn't answer. It was a different voice, calm, clipped, official. "We received preliminary confirmation," the man said. "The sample on the photograph tested positive." I froze. Positive for what? For human blood. The line clicked dead. I drove to the old cabin at dusk. The road ran thin through bare trees. On the porch, the air changed, carrying a bitter tang from burned wood and wet leaves. I unlocked the door with the key that had lived too long on my mother's chain. Inside, dust lay thick on the floorboards. I swept my phone light across a fallen lamp, a rug dragged off center, ash freckles by the hearth. I listened for steps that weren't mine and heard only the frame groan. I knelt by the rug and pinched an edge. It lifted with a rasp. Beneath it, the carpet showed a dark oval, burned clean through the weave. Cold reached up from it, a quiet mark of heat long gone. Near the wall, a loose plank knocked under my shoe. I pried the board with a butter knife from the drawer. The space below was shallow. A safe sat inside, metal dulled by years. I tried the dial. Nothing. Then I slid the smallest key from my mother's ring into a notch I almost missed. The click felt like a door unlocking in my chest. Inside lay receipts folded tight, an old revolver wrapped in oilcloth, and a thin letter sealed with browning tape. I lifted the paper first. My name stood alone at the top. The lines wavered, as if written by a hand that would not stop shaking. "He threatened to expose us," it read. "He said he could ruin the rest of our lives. I did what I had to do to keep you safe." Keep me safe from what? I opened the receipts. Hardware store, cleaner fluid, a tarp, rope, dated the week before our picnic at the cabin, a cash withdrawal slip with an amount circled and a note. Settle debt. Each item landed like a stone. Debt to whom? The revolver waited last. I peeled the cloth and saw the dull shine of age, the grip worn smooth by a familiar hand. I didn't touch the trigger. I set it on the safe lid and stepped back. I took 3 photos, then called the detective who had treated me like a nuisance. He answered on the 3rd ring. "You again." "It's not a prank," I said. "There's a safe with receipts, a letter, and a gun. We're stretched thin. Send 1 car," I said. "Or tell me where to bring it." A pause. "Stay put. Do not handle anything else." 2 cars rolled up 20 minutes later. The younger one lifted tape to keep the doorway clean. The older one stood by me, steady where I'd expected doubt. "Walk me through," he said. I did, step by step. He photographed the burned patch, the safe, the letter. He read the line about a threat, and looked at me like pieces had found their order. "What are your stakes here?" he asked. "Safety," I said. "If I fail, I lose that." He nodded to the gun. "We'll check the number." Outside, light left the trees. A wind moved ash across the porch as gray snow. He lowered his voice. "Why now?" "Because waiting feeds bullies," I said. "I'm done feeding him." Almost a smile. "Fair." They bagged the items and signed a log on the hood. The pen scratched loud in the quiet. The younger one took a radio call and handed his partner a card. The older detective met my eyes. "You'll get a case number. Keep your doors locked." My phone buzzed as they finished. A text from an unknown number. "Too late." I showed it. "Forward that to us," he said. He tapped his notes, then the bag with the revolver. "If this connects, the tide turns." "How will I know?" "You'll hear it." Minutes later, a call came through his radio. He listened, set his jaw, and met my eyes. The revolver's serial number matched my uncle's. The next morning, the news ran my face. A neighbor sent a link before I could breathe. The headline was bold and crooked with certainty. It said I was the woman at the center of a family death. Under it, the photo from Thanksgiving, my eyes mid-blink, looked like guilt caught red-handed. I walked to the porch and picked up the newspaper from the step. The print was still damp. My hands came away gray. A second photo showed patrol lights near the cabin. The article quoted a police source about a letter, a gun, a photo. Someone had leaked the note from the file. It didn't say who. I didn't need the name. At 8 a.m., a journalist stood at the gate. "Did you kill your uncle?" She lifted her mic like a badge. I stared at the camera flash popping from the sidewalk and said nothing. My husband moved behind the screen door. She tried again. "Did you stage the evidence?" The camera flash hit my eyes. My silence felt like strategy and failure in the same breath. "Back up," I said. "Tell your side." "When you print truth," I said, "I'll talk." She glanced at her partner. "People think you're lying." "People can be steered," I said. "Facts cannot." They left, but the calls began. The library director used the word administrative leave and said, "We'll review when the dust settles." I knew what that meant. No paycheck next week. No calm routine. By noon, the HR email came with forms I didn't want to open. Bills blinked in my head like a bad marquee. The mortgage draft, the retainer charge, the furnace service we still hadn't scheduled. I made a list at the kitchen table and drew a box around food and heat. Everything else could starve. Another call came from an unknown number. "You're making a spectacle," the voice said. "Identify yourself." Click. Dead air. I read the article again and caught the slant of a sentence I recognized. It was Mark's line, trimmed and dressed to sound official. He was building a story where I was unstable and hungry for attention, where Emma was flighty, where he was the good son saving the family. He wanted me to quit or combust. Either would do. I gathered the folder and walked to Miss Clark's porch. She opened the door before I knocked. "I saw the news," she said. "You look tired." "I am." I kept my voice steady. "Did you see anyone near Emma's house the night she went missing?" "I wasn't going to say anything," she whispered. "I don't like trouble. Truth matters. It's safety." She glanced at the street. "I saw your brother's truck, close to 11. He parked with the lights off. I heard a door, then silence. I watched from my curtains." She swallowed hard. "I should have called." "You're telling me now," I said. "That's a start." She nodded. "I can put it in writing." "Please do." A gate had opened. She was the guard who let me pass. Back home, I stacked the letters, the printed photocopy, the text screenshot about "too late." Every item got a sticky note with a date and what it meant. I called the lawyer's office and asked for an appointment. "We'll fit you in tomorrow," the assistant said. "Bring everything." "I will." My husband came in with a grocery receipt. "We need to slow down," he said. "If you're not working, we can't keep paying for professionals." "I'll sell the extra set of silver," I said. "We'll make rent if we must, but I won't sell the truth." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. I need quiet." "Do what you need." He paused. Do you? I'm past needing permission. By 4 p.m., my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I didn't know. Some called me a liar, some told me to stop. One said, "You're next." I forwarded them to the detective and saved every thread. Fear felt like a bill that arrived daily. I couldn't pay it with silence anymore. The journalist returned at dusk. "New statement?" she asked. I pointed to the newspaper on the step. "Same paper tomorrow?" I said. "Different laid." She frowned. "How?" I held the folder to my chest. "With facts." After dark, Ms. Clark slid an envelope under my door. Inside was a simple line in careful writing. I saw his truck near her house. It wasn't proof that solves everything. It was a wedge that holds a door. I placed the note on top of the stack and pressed my palm flat. If I failed now, I would become their scapegoat and lose the little safety I had left. That understanding kept my spine straight. A knock landed on the door at 7 p.m. I opened it to a man in a suit, polite and distant. He asked for me by name and handed over a packet sealed with string. My stomach knew what it was before my eyes did. A subpoena arrived. Mark versus me. The courtroom smelled of stale coffee and fear. Rows of benches creaked as people shifted, whispering behind hands. The gavel hit once, a sharp sound that made my stomach knot. Across the aisle, Mark sat with his lawyer, his suit too polished, his smirk too calm. He'd turned the family war into theater. Cameras waited in the hallway, hungry for the next fall. The clerk read the case title, Mark versus Me, Defamation. He claimed I'd destroyed his good name with lies. My attorney leaned close and said quietly, "We'll start with evidence, not emotion." Easy to say when your heart isn't on trial. When they called me to the stand, the microphone buzzed faintly. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The judge, gray-haired and still, nodded. "You may begin." My lawyer started slow. The defendant discovered a photograph containing human blood. The lab confirmed it matched the deceased's type. "Do you dispute this?" Mark's lawyer rose. "Relevance?" The judge waved him down. "Overruled. Continue." My lawyer turned to me. "When you received the report, what did you think?" "That my uncle's death wasn't an accident," I said, "and that someone wanted it buried." Mark leaned forward, smiling. "You always did like stories," he muttered. The judge snapped, "Mr. Carson, you'll be silent unless addressed." He sat back, lips pressed thin. Next came the forensic analyst. She spoke carefully, her voice clear enough to cut through the murmurs. The blood sample from the photograph was confirmed as human, type B positive. That matches the victim, not the defendant, not her brother. Mark's jaw tightened for the first time. The judge turned to me. "Do you believe your mother was involved in your uncle's death?" My throat went dry. "No," I said slowly, "but she knew who was." A rustle swept through the benches. My husband looked down, twisting his ring, a nervous tell he'd never had before this year. I stared straight ahead. There was no turning back. The detective took the stand next. Phone records place Mark's device near Emma's house between 10:40 and 11:12 p.m. the night she disappeared. The tower data shows movement consistent with a vehicle leaving the area minutes before the neighbor's call about a loud argument. Mark laughed under his breath. "Coincidence," he said. The detective didn't look at him. "We don't build cases on coincidence, sir." The room buzzed again. I caught fragments. Cover-up, money, inheritance. The judge banged the gavel twice. "Order." My lawyer spread the receipts on the table, the same ones from the safe. Hardware store purchases, cleaning agents, rope, a cash withdrawal for $2,000 days before the victim's death. Handwritten note says, "Settle debt. Your handwriting, correct?" he asked Mark. "No proof of that," Mark said. "But it's identical to your signature on the estate forms," my lawyer replied. The judge leaned back. "Mr. Carson, would you like to respond?" Mark straightened. "My sister's twisting history. Our uncle was ill. He fell. She's desperate for attention and inheritance." I spoke up. The estate was divided years ago. There's no money left to chase. He turned toward me. You've always wanted control. Control? I said softly. You sent threats. You sabotaged power. You framed me to protect your lie. Enough, the judge warned. You'll both confine yourselves to facts. Silence spread, heavy and hot. The sound of the air vent was the only motion in the room. I glanced at the bailiff standing near the door, his hand resting on the handle as if bracing for eruption. The detective continued. When we examined the revolver recovered from the safe, its serial number matched the victim's registered firearm. Ballistics confirmed a discharge close to the estimated time of death. It was wiped clean. The judge's brow lifted. That's significant. Mark's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering fast. Whatever confidence Mark had left began to crumble at the edges. He sat back, eyes unfocused, a small shake in his hand. The judge looked down at the docket. We'll recess until morning. I'll review the transcripts and evidence before determining next steps. The gavel struck again, echoing off the wooden walls. I exhaled for the first time in hours. My husband approached, voice low. You think this will end it? No, I said, but it'll make the truth harder to bury. The reporters outside were waiting again, but I didn't stop to speak. I walked down the steps into the cold air, clutching my bag like it held my pulse. The sky had dimmed to a bruised gray, and for the first time I felt the balance shift. Not in my favor yet, but away from his control. I reached the bottom stair when the bailiff hurried out behind me. Ma'am, he called, voice uneven. Detective wants you back inside. Why? He glanced around, lowering his tone. They just got a call from field agents. I froze. What happened? He swallowed hard before saying it. They found Emma. Emma walked into court, thinner, trembling, but alive. The room inhaled at once. My hands gripped the bench so hard my knuckles cooled. The microphone on the witness stand gave a small, tinny buzz that made everything feel closer and real. The judge watched her step forward, eyes steady. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light. Our mother's old one, a small circle that once meant be quiet. Today it meant speak. The clerk swore her in. She nodded, voice rough. I ran because I was afraid. The words dropped like keys on tile. She looked at me, then at Mark. He sat framed by his lawyer's neat files, a picture of patience that felt practiced, not earned. What were you afraid of? My attorney asked. Him, she said, pointing at Mark. He attacked me after I confronted him about the cabin, about the letter, about the gun. He said I would lose everything if I kept pushing. She lifted her arm, sleeve sliding back. A faint scar crossed her forearm. I believed him. He talked about money like a leash. The judge leaned forward. Be specific. He wanted the property and the last of the house funds, she said. He wanted the power that came with handling it. He told me he'd make me look unstable, broke, and alone. I left that night. I stayed with a friend 3 towns over. I kept quiet until I had proof. Mark's lawyer stood. She's inventing this to protect the defendant. Emma's mouth tightened. No, I brought a copy of his emails. She opened her bag and set down a small flash drive and a printed stack. He wrote to a friend about a forged will. He wrote about a dose he took on the fishing trip to give his uncle. He wrote that the water would hide it. Her voice shook. He laughed about how much the payout could be. A ripple moved across the benches. The judge held up a hand for calm, then nodded to the bailiff. The drive went to the clerk, then to the judge. He scanned a page. This email mentions a transfer of $5,000 2 days after the death. His eyes lifted to Mark. Explain that. Mark rose, jaw hard. Business. She's twisting words. Your words, the judge said. My attorney stepped closer. Look at the timestamp on the message where he says, meet at the lake, 6:10 a.m. I'll bring coffee. The victim drowned before noon. Mark's lawyer objected, but it rang thin. The judge lowered the paper. The pattern is clear. The detective took a step to the aisle, ready without being told. Emma kept going, voice finding weight. He told me to stop or I'd lose shelter, job, everything. She glanced at me and swallowed. I found the photo first, then the receipts. When I confronted him, he shoved me. He grabbed my phone. I ran. I knew if I stayed, I'd end up like our uncle. Not dead, maybe, but erased. A spike of anger cut through my chest, clean and simple. She came to me with the truth, I said when the judge allowed a brief response. He answered with threats. The judge looked at Emma. Where did you get the bracelet? From her, she said, meaning our mother. She said it meant keep the family safe. I finally understand. Safety isn't silence. Mark scoffed. You're both performing. I turned to him. Then let the proof speak. My attorney asked Emma one last question. Did he admit to altering the will? He said, words can be moved, people don't read. Those were his words. The judge tapped the stack once. The court accepts this as preliminary material subject to verification. He turned to the detective. You have enough to act? Yes, Your Honor, the detective said. We do. Mark stood fast, chair, legs scraping. This is a setup. She wants the last of the estate. She wants the cabin. She wants sympathy and cash. I felt my voice steady. I want safety. I want the truth fixed in daylight. That was the stake, plain as hunger. The judge nodded to the bailiff. Place Mr. Carson in custody pending formal charges. The room gasped, then hushed. The gavel came down once, a hard end to a long sentence. 2 deputies moved in. Mark twisted, searching for a friendly face. None met him. As they reached for his wrists, he glared at me, eyes bright with rage he could no longer hide. He took one last breath like a dare and made it into a shout that tried to pull me back under. Mark shouted my name as they took him away. After court, the house felt hollow. I set my keys down and listened. The refrigerator hummed, the heater clicked, and the rest was a long, uneasy quiet that made every room sound bigger than it was. A curtain moved in the draft like a hand that couldn't decide to wave. I stood still until the quiet settled into me. It felt like the first breath after surfacing. I started with the hall closet. 1 box, then another. Old coats, a bent umbrella, the sweater my mother never finished. Tape hissed as I sealed the first box. We're not keeping what hurts, I said out loud, just to give the quiet a job. I wasn't ready to bless anything as heirloom or curse. I just needed the rooms to stop echoing. My phone vibrated. The lawyer. He sounded brighter. The injunction stands. Inheritance reinstated. The account is unfrozen. You'll see it by morning. My legs felt loose, like I'd stepped off a moving walkway. Send the final invoice, I told him. I want it paid today. Closure needed receipts. Money had been a lever in this house. I wanted it neutral, silent as the empty sink. I carried a box to the dining room. The table watched me, old wood scarred by wine and knives and one Thanksgiving no one would forget. You held too many secrets, I whispered. Not a prayer, just a fact. The sun shifted across the surface and found the spot where Emma's new bracelet had flashed at noon. The light felt clean this time. I placed a stack of letters in the box, tied with twine. Not for burning, for order. I wasn't erasing our past. I was shelving it where it couldn't run the house. He came in without words and set a mug beside me. Hot enough, he said. His voice was careful, like the house might shatter if he breathed too hard. I took a sip and nodded. I don't need you to fix anything, I said. Just don't step away again. He met my eyes and stayed. The quiet changed shape. It wasn't the kind that threatens. It was the kind that lets you think. At 4 p.m, the mail arrived. Bills, circulars, a pale notice from the court about property records. I opened the notice and felt my jaw unclench. The cabin would hold until the review was complete. No quick sale, no midnight signature. I put that paper into a folder marked Keep. Small wins add spine. I sent the lawyer's payment from my account and watched the balance dip. It was worth every dollar. Safety costs. Dignity, too. I worked room by room. The bedroom gave up a shoebox of postcards. The kitchen produced a drawer of rubber bands and untidy guilt. I touched the refrigerator door and laughed once, dry and short. "Thank you for hiding tears," I said, remembering nights I cried into the cold. I wrote a list for repairs we could do ourselves and a list for a contractor. No more patching, I told myself. We build or we don't. By early evening, my back ached. He rubbed my shoulders, slow enough to ask and not demand. "Take a break," he said. "We'll order soup. I've got cash." I smiled at that small offering. We had credit again, but the gesture mattered more than the bill. "Soup and bread," I said. "Nothing sweet. I want to taste simple." He nodded and left his wallet on the table like a promise to return. I went to the study and opened the bottom drawer where the photo had once been. Empty. Good. I slid the drawer out to wipe the dust and noticed the floorboard beneath it wasn't flush. I pressed it with my thumb. It shifted. The curtain stirred again at my back, a soft reminder that the house still had breath in it. I listened, and the quiet answered with nothing at all. Calm, not warning. I pried the edge with a butter knife and lifted the board. A cavity waited, dry and neat, the size of a book. My hand hovered. "No more ghosts," I told the room. The stakes were simple now. I needed a life I could stand to wake up in. I reached inside, fingers brushing cardboard, the shape of something kept for years because someone wanted it close and unseen. Then I found one last envelope under the floorboard, her handwriting again, shaky but clear. I sat at the kitchen table just after 10, the envelope heavy as a stone. The paper rasped against my fingers as I slid it free. The edges were soft from years of hiding. My thumb found the grooves where ink had bitten down. I braced myself and began to read. "My dear girl," it began, and my jaw locked. Love arrived on the first line, and guilt walked right behind it. She wrote about loyalty the way others write about faith. She said she had nursed a story until it looked like truth. She said it kept the house standing. I stared at the empty chair across from me and felt the old cost return. She named him. She named what he did. Then she named her sin. Silence. "I smothered the facts," she wrote, "because I believed keeping the family whole was worth the price." I whispered, "What price?" And the room had no answer. I set my palm on the page, needing contact, needing proof to be warm and real. He stepped in quietly and leaned on the doorframe. "Do you want me here?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Just listen." I read, aloud. The words shook as they crossed the air. He didn't move closer, didn't pull away. He stayed like a witness 1 seat behind the truth. That steadiness let me keep going. She wrote about money in plain numbers. She wrote about the trust, the split, the loans that were never called loans. She said the will he forged would have ruined what was left. She said she kept the lie because the accounts would survive. I thought the roof over your head mattered more than justice. I closed my eyes and saw the roof leak anyway. Was I blind? The room held its breath. "No," he said. "Was she kind?" "Sometimes." "Was it murder?" He breathed. "Yes." I folded the page and then opened it again. The stakes were still simple. I needed a life I could stand to wake in. "She tried to save us," I said, "and lost us anyway." He touched the crease of the letter with one finger, asking without a word if he could hold it. I let him. My hands had started to ache. I lit a candle and set it by the envelope. The flame wavered once and stood still. "Not forgiveness," I said, "but release." The wax pooled slowly like a quiet decision. I took the ring she had left me and laid it beside the flame. "You don't have to guard me anymore," I told the room. The room for once believed me. I felt lighter and worse at the same time. Freedom has a bill, and today I was paying it. I thought about the job I'd lost, the savings I'd spent, the fee I'd just transferred to close the case. None of it felt wasted. "We can rebuild," he said. "We sell, we rent for a while, we wait." I nodded. Patience is a kind of income. I went to the window and looked out at the porch where the first warning had sat. The street was empty, the kind that makes you hear your own breath. She wanted the house to stay ours, I said. She wanted us to stay one piece. He joined me at the glass. We can honor her without living inside her fear. We'll cover moving costs from the escrow credit. I returned to the table and signed my name at the bottom of her last page, not as approval, but as witness. Then I slid the letter back into its envelope and pressed the seam flat. My hands remembered every envelope I had sealed these months. My hands were done hiding. "Call the realtor," he said. "Morning?" "Morning," I answered, and the word felt clean. Tomorrow, I'll sell the house. This year, Thanksgiving was just me and Emma. We woke early and moved slow, two people learning our new rhythm. I set plates on the new table and breathed in the day. We cooked in calm that wasn't fear. It felt like breath after a long swim. I tasted the first spoon of the soup, warm and steady, and nodded. "Need salt," she said, smiling. I added a pinch and felt my shoulders drop. We kept costs simple. No fancy roast, no show, a chicken, root vegetables, a pie we'd try not to burn. The receipt was short and honest. I liked that. Peace can be simple. I slid the old bracelet higher on my wrist and let the metal rest. We are not hiding anymore. "Do we say grace?" she asked. I looked at her hands. "Let's thank the living," I said. We stood by the chairs. "For work that waits," I said. "For rent we can cover. For nights we can sleep." She added, "For the truth we dragged into open air." We sat, and the room finally felt like ours. Around noon the street was quiet and kind. I thought about the case ledger closing, the lawyer paid, the account breathing. We'll buy time, not trophies. I sold the house yesterday. The offer was clean, and I signed without shaking. We packed only what mattered. The new table cost less than the old repairs. That trade felt right, truly. She burned the first pie anyway. We laughed until we had to lean on the counter. "Again?" she groaned. "Again," I said, and we tried once more. The crust flaked like a miracle. I cut it while it was still warm. "Careful," she warned. "I want to taste it now," I said. We did. It was clumsy and sweet. Outside the window, sunlight crossed the floor like a slow hand. I set glasses down and listened to the easy sound of them touching wood. "I kept hearing it," I told her. "That first promise. I won't let silence win." She lifted her glass. "Then keep saying it." I lifted mine. "I will." The words landed and stayed. 3 knocks came at the door. Neighbors. We waved them in. "Just a minute," I said. "No crowd," she whispered, and grinned. We passed small plates and smaller stories. A widow from next door left us cuttings for the windowsill. A boy came with a card he'd drawn. "For winning," he said. I pressed my hand to my heart. They left by mid-afternoon, and the room settled. I washed pans and added up the day, groceries paid, deposit safe, car tank half full. Tomorrow I'll call about work at the school library. We don't need perfect. We need steady. I dried my hands on a towel that had no stains yet. "No secrets," I said. "No threats," she said. "No more shame," I said. We breathed together. "Only truth," she said. "If we slip back, we lose ourselves." "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Which part?" "The old house, the old holiday." I thought for a while. "I miss who we hoped we were," I said, "but I don't miss paying for a lie." She nodded and touched the bracelet on my wrist. "Keep it," she said, "but change what it means." We carried the dishes back to the new table. Steam rose from the last pan. "Ready?" I asked. "Ready," she said. We ate slowly, letting each bite count. I could taste cinnamon and a shy orange edge. She laughed with her mouth full and covered it, then laughed again. Her shoulders opened like a door. When we were done, we sat in a quiet that belonged to us. I looked at her and saw something unbroken. "What, now?" she asked. "Now we live," I said. The room held that sentence like a promise. We ate in sunlight, not in silence. Did you enjoy this story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I read every comment. If the story touched you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this every day. Your encouragement really helps. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what moment stayed with you. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's plenty more on the channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next life story. With respect and gratitude.